Dakar. Promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar, 7 p.m. in Porto Novo. Good evening and welcome to Newslink and West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world at wadr.org. First, our top stories. Mauritania rejects accusations that detained Malian soldiers escaped its territory. Côte d'Ivoire record rising cases of students' pregnancy annually.
It must be said that we are facing an obstacle to emancipation. Pregnancy often leads to them leaving the school system.
A Guinean President Doumbouya deploys troops over rising border disputes with Liberia as regional leaders convene emergency summit in Conakry. And controversy mounts in Ghana over president's use of private jet amidst procurement plans.
It is cheaper to Ghana to use his brother's jet than to use the commercial flights.
This is wrong. The conflict of interest is glaring, loud, shouting, and is terrible.
Please stay with us for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Sankulu Real Janko.
Many thanks for joining us. The government of Mauritania rejects claims made by the Malian army that two soldiers held by armed terrorist groups escaped from a refugee camp located on its territory. On Sunday, the Malian armed forces confirmed that two soldiers and the prefect of Jola had successfully escaped their captors after months in Mauritanian detention. However, in a statement released this Monday, Mauritania denounces these accusations as unfounded and offensive, asserting that they were made without evidence or prior consultation through appropriate diplomatic channels. Augustine Coley tells us more.
A statement from the Malian Armed Forces General Staff indicates that Private First Class Mohamed Wangaraba and Mohamed El Malou Jallo, who were kidnapped on October 9, 2025 on the Niger River, have been freed. According to the statement, their escape took place between Friday night and Saturday morning following security operations conducted by the Malian army in the Ouagadougou forest along the border between Mali and Mauritania. The military high command says after their escape, the two soldiers were taken to Gondam near Timbuktu for care. The identity of their kidnappers remains unknown, but the army specifies that the soldiers were being held in the refugee camp in Mauritania. Furthermore, the Malian army has announced that the prefect of Jaula in the southwest of the country, who was kidnapped on February 14, has managed to escape from his captors. This announcement prompted a reaction from Mauritania on Monday. Wadr, in a statement, denounced the accusations as unfounded and offensive. The Mauritanian government also calls on Malian authorities to exercise greater rigor in their official communications and to prioritize diplomatic channels for addressing sensitive security issues.
Augustine Coley filed that report. Still in Mali, a coalition of NGOs and civil society actors is urging the transitional government to scrap a new 10% levy on humanitarian project funding. Critics warn that the directive could jeopardize life-saving assistance for over 5 million Malians currently facing severe food and security instability. Christopher Atichi completes the story.
The coalition of NGOs and civil society actors operating in Mali says the new measures are both restrictive and potentially damaging. They argue that humanitarian programs are already governed by strict international monitoring and transparency protocol defined by global partners. According to these organizations, an additional 10% tax would directly reduce the resources available for life-changing interventions. Aminata Toure, spokesperson for the National Council of Civil Society, explains the implications for the most vulnerable.
As associations, foundations and NGOs, we contribute to local development. A 10% reduction in the budget means less assistance to vulnerable people for their needs, such as healthcare, food security, access to drinking water, and protection, among others. So, these are needs that risk being deprived. There's already very little intervention at the local level because partners are almost no longer in Mali.
While the organizations acknowledged the government-state goals of increasing transparency and accountability, they are calling for an immediate dialogue. Their primary objective is to persuade the transitional authorities to abandon the tax, which they describe as burden on benevolence.
We have conducted research, and in some countries, they have even adopted a 1% rate, and it didn't work. So, we believe that 10% is too much, and it's not even normal for us to contribute. We are already contributing. What civil society organizations are doing on the ground is immense. So, we believe that they should drop it, and that together we try to reflect on other parts to find the internal means and resources necessary.
This controversial decision comes at a critical time for the Sahelian nation. Currently, an estimated 5.1 million people are in urgent need of humanitarian assistance, with the 2026 Humanitarian Response Plan aiming to reach nearly 4 million people. Many fear that this new fiscal policy may underestimate the very progress the state seeks to protect.
Bamako correspondent Ali Cham's report, voiced by Christopher Aticho. Meanwhile, the U.S. Special Envoy for the Sahel, Nick Cheka, visited Niger last weekend after stops in Mali and Burkina Faso. He arrived in Niamey and was received by the Nigerian Prime Minister Ali Mohamed Lamin Zain. The senior official from the Bureau of African Affairs at the U.S. Department presented a new vision for cooperation that Washington hopes to establish with Niamey. Nick Cheka's visit confirms Washington's desire to revitalize a bilateral partnership that has been strained since the coup d'etat of July 2023. In this context, Mohamed Sani Adamo, a specialist in political and security issues, says the current approach by Washington should not be interpreted as a simple return to normalcy, but rather as an adaptation to a new geopolitical reality.
They are taking steps that are somewhat contrary to the French stance, which gives the impression that they are more acceptable than the French. But in reality, the objective is the same. We know what they are capable of. Current events are proof of that. When these countries come to us today with a smile, telling us they are ready for economic cooperation with us based on mutual respect, etc., they have only ever respected force. I think the authorities of these three countries must be extremely vigilant and have a clear understanding of what these countries are really like. Now is not the time to let it through the window, what we left out the door.
Maman Sani Adamo is a specialist in political and security issues.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
While still on security matters, the tensions in the Mano River sub-region have reached a critical peak as leaders from Guinea, Sierra Leone and Liberia are meeting in Conakry for crisis talks. The summit follows President Mahamadou Doumbouya's deployment of a military contingent to the Liberian border during the weekend. He charged the military with a mandate to reclaim territorial integrity amid a land dispute. Osman Omar tells us more in this report.
The diplomatic atmosphere in Conakry is charged as leaders from the Mano River Union gather to avert a potential military escalation. At the heart of the crisis is a bitter territorial dispute, with Guinea accusing Liberian forces of invading its sovereignty and illegally hoisting the Liberian flag on Guinean soil. The Guinean military command has labeled the move unacceptable. Ibrahima Sori Bangura, chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, insists that the army will not cede an inch of national territory.
The army will never fail in its mission to defend the integrity of our territory. We maintain courtesy, but that does not prevent us from fulfilling our duty of defense. Therefore, I would like to reassure the Guinean population. First, stay calm, do not resort to confrontation, and let the army do its job. You must be certain that not a single portion of our land will be ceded to anyone.
In a show of force on Sunday, President Mahamadou Doumbouya personally presided over the departure of a specialized military unit headed for the border town of Guekedu. Their mission is clear: to reinstate the Guinean flag, which the authorities claim was provocatively removed by Liberian soldiers. Despite the military posturing, Guinea's foreign minister, Morisenda Kouyate, maintains that the door to diplomacy remains open. Speaking ahead of today's summit, which includes Côte d'Ivoire as a high-level observer, Kouyate reiterated Guinea's commitment to dialogue, provided its borders are respected.
There have been some provocations from these brotherly countries, However, we have had the opportunity to see that these fellow heads of state have proposed to come here to Guinea so that we can sit around a table. This is so we can smooth over all these differences within the framework of the Mano River Union.
As the leaders meet behind closed doors today, the eyes of the region are on Conakry. The outcome of this summit will determine whether the Mano River Union can return to its foundations of peaceful coexistence or if the sub-region is headed for a protracted border conflict.
A report by WDR's Guinea correspondent Channel Alpha Ibrahim Balde, presented by Osman Omar.
This is breaking news.
Breaking news.
Well, news is breaking that the 2 people have died after a micro aircraft crash in Tema in the Greater Accra region of Ghana on Monday afternoon. The Ghana Civil Aviation Authority says the aircraft with registration number 9GADV was flying home from Accra to when the incident occurred. According to the authority, the aircraft was expected to arrive in Accra at 3:30 p.m. but lost radio contact with the pilot was recorded at about 2:18 p.m. Emergency responders say the aircraft went down near a school park at Tema Community 1, close to the TMA daycare facility, triggering a fire that drew a rapid response from the Ghana National Fire Service. Fire officials say by the time personnel arrived, teachers and pupils at the nearby school had already been evacuated to safety. After the firefighters extinguished the blaze, 2 male occupants were found dead in the wreckage. Still in Ghana, a heated debate emerges over the President Mahama's use of his brother's private aircraft for official state travels. While the presidency maintains that the arrangement saves cost, the opposition and civil society are raising concerns over security and potential conflict of interest. WDR's Accra correspondent Nadi Tete reports.
The controversy centers on President Mahama's reliance on a jet owned by his brother, Business Mogul Ibrahim Mahama. The governing National Democratic Congress, the NDC, argues the arrangement is a pragmatic way to manage travel expenses in the interim. Here is the NDC's Deputy National Communications Officer, Godwin Akogan.
I can tell you all sincerely that it is cheaper to Ghana to use his brother's jet than to use the commercial flights. And what we have promised is never to pay for a private jet and fly on that.
Is that what is holding you back? Even if you're able to get a private jet that is not as costly as what the previous administration was taking, you're not going to use it?
Once it's a commercial jet, the cost will be higher than using your brother's own.
However, the defense hasn't silenced the critics. Kofi Bentil, vice president of the think tank Imani Africa, argues that the implications go far beyond the national budget.
This is wrong. The justification of saving money is wrong. The security issues are serious. The conflict of interest is glaring, loud, shouting, and is terrible. And it makes the president lose his moral authority to check his people when they are taking jets of their friends to do government business.
Meanwhile, Executive Secretary to the President, Dr. Callistus Mahama, says the presidency acknowledges the concerns raised by the public and remains committed to rebuilding trust under the administration's reset agenda. He says government is already working to strengthen Ghana's presidential air transport capacity, with plans to add new aircraft to the fleet by November, including one dedicated to the president's travel. According to him, the move forms part of a broader retooling of the Ghana Armed Forces aimed at improving the country's operational capabilities, including air transport for official duties. The presidency maintains that once the aircraft is acquired, Ghana will rely fully on state assets for the safe and efficient transportation of the head of state. For WADR, Nadi Tete, Accra.
Now to educational matters. In Côte d'Ivoire, nearly every school year is marked by cases of pregnancy among students. Analysts say it is a persistent phenomenon, despite numerous awareness campaigns conducted by Ivorian authorities. The situation is more prevalent in Beomi, the center of the country, where the fight against teenage pregnancy in schools has become a social, educational, and moral imperative to safeguard the future of Ivorian schools. Imo Edit reports.
In the Beomi, the situation is causing serious concern within the educational community. 43 students have become pregnant in the middle of the school year, barely 2 terms after the start of classes. This alarming statistic comes despite the numerous awareness campaigns initiated by the Ministry of National Education in schools. Dr. Gamian Kwaku, a sociologist, says this resurgence of early pregnancies among students stems from several factors.
We have social and economic insecurity. It must be said that in many regions, poverty exposes young girls to transactional relationships to meet their basic needs. Some, of course, turn to older men with financial resources. Secondly, we have a lack of guardians and separation from their families. They lack the supervision and emotional support necessary to navigate social pressures. And thirdly, we have cultural barriers and the taboo surrounding sexuality.
The low school enrollment rate for girls in some inland areas of the country remains a source of concern. For several years, the Ivorian government has been increasing its efforts to encourage parents to keep their daughters in school. However, according to the sociologists, these efforts must be accompanied by stronger measures to protect students and ensure their continued enrollment in the education system.
It must be said that we are facing an obstacle to emancipation. For the student, pregnancy is not just a medical event. It's a life-altering event. Social exclusion and dropping out of school are among the consequences. Despite laws encouraging pregnant girls to stay in school, peer stigma and physical exhaustion often lead to them leaving the school system.
Faced with the persistence of this phenomenon, educational authorities are urged to redouble their efforts to curb this scourge, which jeopardizes the future of many young girls and undermines the progress made in school enrollment.
A report from Abidjan, correspondent Matthew Aristemble, voiced by Imo Edet. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal, online at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Mauritania rejects accusation that detained Malian soldiers escaped its territory. Côte d'Ivoire records rising cases of students' pregnancy annually. Guinean President Doumbouya deploys troops over rising border dispute with Liberia as regional leaders convene emergency summit in Conakry. And controversy mounts in Ghana over president's use of a private jet amidst procurement plans. Still ahead, we have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
The Senegalese Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko is mobilizing his own allies into a coalition. On Saturday, Sonko held a meeting with leaders of the APTI coalition and announced that the Passive National Council will soon be held under his chairmanship. The meeting came less than a week after President Bassirou Diomaye Faye met with members of the Diomaye President coalition. Several ministers, members of the government, were seen at Sonko's gathering, including Déthié Fall, Minister of Infrastructure, Cheikh Tidiane Dièye, Minister of Water Resources, and Mustafa Gracie, Minister of National Education, all three considered allies of PASTEF. These mobilizations come amid the reported rift between the Senegalese president and his prime minister. Despite these issues, Prime Minister Sonko and President Faye have repeatedly reaffirmed their willingness to work together within the framework of their respective responsibilities without publicly questioning their cooperation at the highest level of the state. The Nigerian government has launched a new national action plan designed to modernize the country's embattled criminal justice sector. The strategy aims to harmonize operations between law enforcement and the judiciary to eliminate trial delays and chronic prison overcrowding. Yechinu Sasitu gives us details from Abuja.
Attorney General and Minister of Justice Lateef Fagbemi unveiled the roadmap during a high-level stakeholders meeting. He noted that the plan is a deliberate move to transition Nigeria's legal framework toward a system that is efficient, timely, and grounded in human rights.
Now, beyond its early years, our focus must shift decisively from what the law provides to what the system delivers. The true test of the act lies in whether daily institutional practice reflects its core objectives, ensuring efficiency and speed in criminal proceedings, protecting the rights of suspects and defendants while maintaining public safety.
The Attorney General explained that this new strategy moves beyond policy talk into measurable outcomes with strict timelines A key focus is boosting collaboration between security and judicial agencies to ensure justice is not just a goal, but a reality.
These goals align with the constitutional guarantees of fair hearing, personal liberty, and the presumption of innocence, as well as Nigeria's international commitment and widely accepted standards such as the Mandela Rule and Tokyo Rule.
The plan builds on existing reforms, including the new criminal justice reporting portal and electronic filing systems now operational in FCT magistrate courts. These digital tools, alongside expanded duty solicitor schemes, are designed to drastically reduce unlawful detentions and speed up the wheels of justice. For WADR, Hichinusa Situ in Abuja.
Now to electoral matters. The Gambia's National Council for Civic Education has wrapped up a series of community dialogues in the West Coast region. The meetings are part of preparations for the 2026 presidential polls. It was an initiative focused on fostering political tolerance and shared values. From Banjul, Sang Donald Mendy reports.
Between March 10th and 14th, over 500 influential voices from the Upper, Central, North Bank, Lower River and West Coast regions gathered for a series of intensive dialogue cycles. The focus was clear, identifying the shared values that unite Gambians and defining the role leaders must play in fostering tolerance. Speaking at the closing session, the chairman of the National Council for Civic Education, Mamadou Esise, emphasized that these grassroots conversations are the bedrock of national stability.
Whether you are a political actor, a community leader, or a youth advocate, you have been called here because you hold the keys to the peace of your community. You are the true gatekeepers of our national stability.
Echoing these sentiments, the deputy head of programming at the Catholic Relief Services, Mukhtar Jammeh, hailed the dialogue as a transformative peace-building tool.
The structured dialogue sessions that are being implemented across the country are designed to create deliberate opportunities for diverse groups to sit together, listen to one another, and build mutual understanding. The structured dialogue sessions that are being implemented across the country are designed to create deliberate opportunities for diverse groups to sit together, listen to one another, and build mutual understanding.
This session didn't shy away from the tough issue. Either organizers created a safe space for stakeholders to tackle rising political tensions, the spread of misinformation, and the increasing use of abuse language in public discourse. The initiative, which concluded this past Saturday, is part of a broader mission to ensure that, as the 2026 polls approach, the Gambia political landscape remains defined by engagement rather than confrontation. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Sangdana Mendy, reporting from Banjul.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is The Guest.
The guest interview focuses on rising tensions in the Mano River sub-region, which have reached a critical peak as leaders from Guinea, Sierra Leone and Liberia gather in Conakry today for crisis talks. The summit follows President Mamadou Doumbouya's deployment of a military contingent to the Liberian border during the weekend. He charged the military with a mandate to reclaim territorial integrity amid a land dispute. Our guest is Sam Sion, a regional security expert who shares his insight into the situation.
What's happening right now at the various borders, besides the situation at the Solamba border, there are other situations happening with the border between Guinea and Sierra Leone. This is a dangerous precedent. If care is not taken, this kind of situation can degenerate into a conflict between the various Mano River basin countries. I think the people of Guinea or the government of Guinea are attempting to redraw the boundary lines. And you can't do that. You cannot draw the boundary lines just on your own without letting the other government know about it. You know, border situations always have a huge security implications. When these boundary situations taking place, people observe it. We are also told, not to the public, that Guinean government also doing similar thing with Mali. I think doing these things, if the intent was well, the authorities in those countries should have been put on notice, letting them know that they intend to re-examine, re-evaluate, recheck the border lines to ensure that they have a land in your country, or they believe that some portion of the land are in that country, they will go and reclaim it.
Does the Guinean government require approval, or does it need to consult its neighboring countries before deploying its military to secure its surrounding borders?
Well, you don't need a permission to deploy your troop because it's your troop. But the fact that you are making huge deployment along the border with the other country, that is an indication of an intent. You know, in law enforcement, when crime is committed, two things have to be present. One is intent, the second is opportunity. So if you have the desire and the opportunity, those two have to be present. You got to have an intent. Why are you deploying right now? So this deploying is not only serving to deter someone, it's an indication that you have an intent. That's why we should avoid those boundary lines being drawn for more than 100 years. You know, Liberia was the first independent country. Right now, trying to redraw a boundary line, that is not a good intent.
What could be the intent that you're talking about?
Well, you got to have an intent before you make an action. Why is it deploying? Liberia got porous border with Guinea. Guinea also porous border with Liberia and Sierra Leone. There has never been at any moment where huge deployment were made. What I know usually happens when there is election in either of the country, security forces will do what we call confident patrol. This patrol will not be deployment in a particular part of the border, but will be patrol along the border, indicating that no one from that country or from your country will attempt to cross and interrupt that country elections. These are corporations.
This deployment comes just some hours to a meeting that the ECOWAS Commission has planned to ensure that its assessment mission, the ECOWAS assessment mission, meets with the various governments within the Mana River Union. But what do you make of the intervention?
Too late, but better late than never. ECOWAS should be proactive because when these situations are nipped to the bud, it wouldn't degenerate. While Guinea is deploying, I saw a video, I don't know whether it's a genuine video, where the Guinean government, the president of Guinea, assigned the flag to the troop towards the border. These kind of signs, I think are a sign. ECOWAS should immediately pull hot to this thing. You can deploy your troop at your border at any time. It's your border. So I think ECOWAS should be fast enough to ensure that we don't have a border dispute that will result into some kind of war.
Sam Srayong, a regional security expert. Well, in sports, France ranked the third globally held of a determined Nigerian side to claim a 93-86 victory in Group A clash at the FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup 2026 qualifiers in Valbonne. From tip-off, the hosts imposed their rhythm at the Arrobol Arena, establishing an early lead and never looking back. Nigeria, Africa's reigning champions, mounted a spirited third quarter push, closing the gap to just 7 points, but France Camposo in the final quarter sealed the win. The result underscores France's ability to maintain focus on the pressure, while Nigeria will now look to build on their strong phases of the play and their third quarter surge at the tournament as the tournament continues. Well, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa, the Macras Radio broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Maudo Ju for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, Instagram, and Facebook at WDR English. I am Sankule Jibril Janko. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.